Guys, and welcome to this week's episode analyzer. So we haven't done an episode analyzer in absolutely ages, and I wanted to really more than anything kind of reevaluate how we were doing the episode analyzer. Sticking them on the end of it every episode just wasn't really kind of streamlined enough. We were adding a lot of extra minutes onto episodes, making them really extended, and ideally, I want to keep my episodes to about 20 to 25 minutes long a piece, especially the School of Hard Knocks episodes, because, it's great and all that. I get so much support from you guys, but I appreciate that, that going over that is maybe asking quite a little bit too much sometimes for you to sit down and watch an entire, sometimes 30-40 minute episode a night. So what I decided was probably a good idea to do was to keep this feature, because I feel like it's quite beneficial for us going forward, and it really kind of adds on a little bit extra to the videos that we do through the week, and how you can kind of transition this into your own practice and testing and things like that. And it's something I do, maybe sometimes a bit subconsciously, but sometimes I do sit down and more often than not I will look back at losses and things like that, and I think it's a really important key part of Pokemon and wanting to improve yourself and especially your team and maybe your players and how you can approach games differently and things like that. So hopefully we deliver that through this series, and a better way of delivering it, I feel, is not by tagging it on to each individual episode and doing an analysis on those episodes, if I can get my words out right, and but rather kind of culminate it all into an episode by itself, a standalone series that we do at the end of every week, just on the School of Hard Knocks, just on the VGC content, and we look back at the games that we've played, pick out kind of highlighted games, and analyse them a little bit more in depth in this episode, just to have a look at where we went wrong, maybe what matchups we're struggling against, what cores and things we're struggling against, and what we can do to adapt these things, improve going forward, and hopefully make the team stronger as well. Sometimes you kind of at a point where it's just not working completely, and it's better to just kind of put it to bed and then come back to it at a later date, because sometimes it won't fit or work within the current stage of a format. There might be something that's really popular at that current time that just makes that team not tick right, and then later on in the format, when that and the metagame's developed a bit more, that Pokemon might not be used as much. So it's those times that you need to keep an eye out for and think, oh, I could actually let's say for just theory's sake, it's never happened this season, but say if, for instance, in February we were looking at playing this team and Arcanine was super popular around that time, and you think, oh, this team really struggles against Arcanine, so it's everywhere, every team's got it, it's probably not a good idea to bring it at the moment, let's put it away. And then say 3 months later, this is all just hypothetical by the way, because we know this didn't happen, but say 3 months later we have a lot more rain in the format, we have a lot more threats to Arcanine, and Arcanine's usage stats kind of just dip away, and then you think, oh, okay, the things that are checking Arcanine we can disrupt with our Hail mode. Our Hail isn't as threatened anymore because that big threat has kind of fallen off the usage stats, so why don't we try it again, and then bring it back and try it again. And this is my point. I would never say to, if you've built a team and you're happy with it, never just forget about it completely, because it's sometimes worth going back to, and there's always going to be key elements in a team anyway, regardless of how it's performing at a time or not, and you can always pull those elements out and they'll fit into another team. You possibly have to change things up to suit that team specifically for the roles that they want to play, but the ideas themselves are there, and that's something you've come up with it yourself at the time and you believe that it works. So don't ever just kind of throw your ideas away and forget about them and never come back to them, because it's something that I think is quite useful sometimes, and especially when you're playing through a format, it's always good to have as much knowledge and kind of experience and ideas and things in your arsenal as you've got possible to kind of pick and choose from. So that is my little brief overview here, but basically hopefully this series, this mini series that we'll do to tag on, does help and benefits you all as well. It would be great to hear your feedback on it afterwards, if there's improvements here and there, Do let me know if there's things you'd like to see added and things like that. Then do let me know as well, because it's just a learning curve at the minute, and we're just trialing it. We're just going to see how it works. It's going to be a bit rough and ready in places, but I think the basic concepts are there. As we go through it a bit more and we get a bit more comfortable with it, from myself personally, it'll get a bit more polished as well, so we'll get it looking really nice in the end. And you know, it's just teething problems at the moment for ourselves and how we're going to kind of go through this and portray this, but I do feel like it's going to be a big benefit for you guys, and I'm going to get a lot out of it as well, I think. So all sides are going to benefit. So anyway, enough of the rambling, and the rambling won't be like this for every episode. I just want to make sure, you know, you understand why we're doing this and the basic kind of concepts behind doing this, rather than just jump into it and say, this is why this happened, this is why this happened. I want to just get that underlying kind of feel for why we're doing this across to you guys, so you've got a bit of a better understanding of the benefits that it can hopefully provide. And we'll just jump into the episode now. All the other episodes will be straight into it. I just want to make sure that message is kind of put across. But this week on the channel, we decided to play a Hail team. So it was all based around Vanilluxe and Alolan Sandslash. You can see the team on the screen right now. It's to my right, but everything's kind of flipped over, whatever. So it's on the screen. So it's consisting of Tapu Lele, Vanilluxe, Alolan Sandslash, Alolan Muck, Gyarados, and Alolan Marowak. So the basic concept, as I said, was that Hail Core. Looking at the Hail Core, we've already mentioned some things that it's weak against some big threats in the metagame. There are a lot of big threats to the Hail Core in the metagame. You've got Arcanine is a big one, huge one in fact. You've got a lot of steel types that resist it and threaten it as well. So you need to make sure you've got cover for that. You know, opposing weather as well kind of disrupts the way you can kind of operate. Things like Gigalith, Torkoal, even Pelipper can be a big problem for you to kind of operate around. So I've put the rest of the team together just to try and help cover the Hail mode. We've got some interesting picks in there, and we've got some support options as well to try and, you know, help us against some really common archetypes like Trick Room and things like that. So we can go through the team at another time, but I'll just briefly go over it now. So we've got a choice: Scarf, Tapu Lele. It underspeeds Tapu Koko, so you know you are going to be outspeeding the majority of things. I think we speed creep, so we outspeed Whimsicott base 116s. Don't feel like we need to go any higher than that because we want to stay slower than Tapu Koko, so not to give away the Scarf if we lead in against it, so we always get a terrain up as well. Other things that we've got Aurora Veil support on Alolan Sandslash. Now this is something that I've seen ran by other players, and I've come across it on the channel when we've played the School of Hard Knocks as well. I feel like it's a very good utility on Alolan Sandslash, because with the Slush Rush ability in the Hail, you're going to be pretty much faster than most things, allowing you to get that quick Aurora Veil up, which then supports your Vanilluxe next to you to allow it to, because we have got the choice specs on it, get those blizzards off. And that's pretty much the aim of the game. You want to be getting as many blizzards off as you can with Vanilluxe, and just prolonging the longevity of your team is always a good thing. We saw at World Sam Pendelis running Aurora Veil to huge success, taking it that Circuitry Ninetales team right to the final. So you kind of get a good gist of how strong Aurora Veil is in general, and it supports a lot of these Pokemon very well as well. So the other members of the team, we've got Alolan Muck. Now Alolan Muck provides us with some nice answers against opposing Tapus. It gives us a nice switch into things like Tapu Lele that can take advantage of our terrain. We don't have any other terrain we can disrupt Tapu Lele's terrain with, so having good answers to that is always going to be helpful. We've got Taunt on it, and that's to help us a little bit with Trick Room, Gunk Shot as well, because that is just ridiculous, the power of it. Knockoff, obviously, it's got amazing utility, and just in general with Aurora Veil support, you commonly see Ninetales and Muck put together, because the Ninetales protects the Muck from its only weakness, which is ground type attacks. The biggest ground type attack user in the format is Garchomp, which doesn't like hail, so you've got really good protection for that muck with the hail core, and it kind of really synergizes quite nicely there. Then we move on to Gyarados. Now Gyarados obviously makes a lot of sense in this team because of how awkward and threatening Arcanine is, and just fire types in general. It also gives us a nice ground immunity that we otherwise wouldn't have, so that was another reason to put it in. It can Dragon Dance as well, so it gives us another kind of a form of speed control to try and outspeed our opponents, try and find room to get that off and then start sweeping. I've given it the Z move as well because I didn't feel like we had room for it anywhere else in the team. You know, you always want to give the Muck, the Pinch Berry, you want to give a lot of Marowak, the Thick Club. We've got the Choice Scarf on Tapu Lele, so the kind of, we could have went with the Z move on Sandslash, but I felt like Clay was probably a better option because of how we kind of put the team together, especially because we wanted to kind of make as much use out of the Aurora Veil as possible. I think having it on the Sandslash there just makes it more of a utility. We're taking advantage of it, making it prolonging the turns that we've got the Aurora Veil up and making more of a thing of it to protect the rest of the team. And the team really does rely on it quite a lot because we can't always rely on the Intimidate from Gyarados to kind of just do the jobs that it needs to in certain situations where we can't maybe switch it in or maybe can't bring it to that match, but we can always have the backup of Aurora Veil, and I feel like they like Clay there. Initially is probably the right choice for item on Sandslash, and it's worked quite well this week, so Z move on Gyarados is just the obvious choice here. It means on -1 as well that we can outspeed the slow support Arcanine variants and pick up a kill on -1 with the Wartarian Z. We've got Roar in it as well, and that will help out against setup Pokemon, so I think a combination of, like, at the very start of the season, and I'm really going on here, so sorry about this, guys, but I hope it helps kind of explain, and this is probably help going into next week and then the week after, like next week's episode analyzer as well, just this basic concept here. But when I first started the format, the Eevee team was a thing, obviously, before London as well. And I always found that having the utility within the team support options of Taunt and Roll give you pretty much perfect coverage against the majority of things that you would kind of face down against. You know, if something goes for a fake out into you, you've got your Taunt user free, or vice versa, you've got your Roll user free to get rid of it. And sometimes Taunt can't, you know, do the job because of Mental Herb, but Roar can. So I feel like having the balance between those two is quite nice, and we haven't got any Trick Room Pokemon in this team. We're quite Trick Room weak, so having those options made a lot of sense. So that kind of explains the Gyarados a little bit. Moving on to our last Pokemon, our last member is Alolan Marowak. We are running a bit of a speedier Alolan Marowak with Substitute. And that's primarily an idea I had a long time ago. I always felt like against Tapu Koko teams, Zerkatry teams and things like that, it's very easy for you to switch in on a Tapu Koko, but it's just as easy for your opponent to switch out at that point. And I felt that if you could get the Marowak in most situations, that next turn is kind of a free turn for you to, because they have to really switch out the Tapu Koko at that point because it's so ineffective, it's not doing anything, and what they want to do at that point, Tapu Koko user, is get rid of that Marowak. As soon as the Marowak's gone, they can use Tapu Koko to just rip through your team. And in that instance where you switch in Alolan Marowak on the Tapu Koko potentially, you know that next turn is a free turn for your Marowak in most instances. And then you can get the substitute up, which allows your partner to maybe set up. In this instance, could be Gyarados. Get that Dragon Dance off, which deals with the threat to deal with Marowak, and hopefully, you know, allows Marowak to sit on the field for a lot longer without having to switch out and force you to change your ball position to then allow your opponent back into the game. And I just think that's a good utility, and I think the faster variant, we're going to be outspeeding things like Muck as well, that allows you to get the sub up, so you can save your Thick Club. Just the knockoff will burn the sub for a turn, and you can maybe bring something in to kind of help out, get rid of the muck, but that was the basic premise of it. And I will just say as well, quickly before we move on, that the muck is a very fast muck compared to what you'd normally see muck run, and that's primarily, I mentioned it in episode 1 this week with this team, that Snorlax and Jolly max speed Snorlax is kind of a thing, and we don't want to get caught up by that. And I think just speed creeping muck, you can afford to, especially with the Aurora Veil, it's bulky enough anyway. We can afford to do that in this team, I feel, and it's so huge getting a knockoff onto a Snorlax before it thinks it can belly drum in front of you, thinking that it's going to outspeed you and get the belly drum off after you, before you can knock the berry off and it's gone. So I think just that is pretty huge in itself. So that was basically the team, as you can see, and then I think some of the matches that I've highlighted this week, we've had a pretty up and down week. We've had a lot of good results, and we've been lucky in places, but I think there's some key areas to look at. I think one of the biggest games this week that we need to look at was in Tuesday's episode this week when we played the Lucario team, and this is the video that I've got up right now, so I'm just going to flick through, hopefully this goes. So here we go. This was the team that we played on Tuesday. Up to this point, I think we were pretty much 2-0 with the team. We had 2 decent-ish games on Monday. I think they were just down to misplays the first game, but Marowak kind of came through in that one. Second game in Monday's episode was fine. Now we go on to Tuesday's episode and we come up against this team, which is 3 starter Pokemon, Mudsdale, Lucario and Porygon Z. Now we've had amazing comments from you guys about everything that's happened this week, about the team, the matches and everything like that, and do keep them coming because it's great to have that feedback from you guys as well. One thing that we always say about Porygon Z in a best of 1 situation is it's so unpredictable. You predict what it is wrong and you get really nailed for it, you know. There's not much coming back. Now I think we were a bit naive here, you know. You can see from the team here that it's probably going to be a Trick Room variant. It's very unlikely that the Porygon Z could be a conversion. I mean, it could be Scarfed as well, but it's more likely because of the inclusion of the Mudsdale in the Primarina that it is a Trick Room variant with potentially that Breakneck Blitz. And it's easy for me to sit here and say that, but we are analysing the game, so we can take that information as fact. I think one big area that was highlighted that we've got a big weakness against is Trick Room Follow Me, because we've not got anything to kind of help us get around that. And now Lucario is a bit of an issue because it resists ice type attacks. And I think, you know, the highlight here was the big thing here, I think, was team selection for us. I don't think there was anything other than team selection here. I think we've got the tools to actually beat this team, and I think in a best of 3, you know, situation, I think we would have had a good shot of coming back game 2 and 3 and getting a result. I think leading off as we did was a big mistake, but it might not have been the worst mistake. It could have went fine, so we'll just skip right forward here. Let me see my opponent leading off with the Lucario and the Porygon Z, and we lead off with our Hail Mode. Now here, we weren't expecting what was going to happen next. We saw the Vacuum Wave come out from the Lucario into the Alolan Sandslash and pick up the KO before we were able to even get an Aurora Veil off, and that put us so far behind right at the early stages of the game, which was super unfortunate. And there wasn't much we could do after that because the other Pokemon that we brought just weren't really up to the job. Now, knowing from Team Preview that there's a Porygon Z in the team, we needed to bring our Alolan Marowak. It made sense to bring it. It does a good job against Porygon Z. It's immune to the big attacks that it can potentially throw out, the Z moves, Hyper Beams. If it's got Bolt Beam even, that it's not doing anything to Marowak. So Marowak for that big threat on that team made so much sense, and we didn't bring it. So that was mistake number 1. Marowak again does so good against Lucario. It can hit it for massively super effective damage. It doesn't care about anything that really Lucario is going to be throwing out at us. gets Bone Rush, but I mean, Marowak's not really too phased by that. It's fighting type attacks on doing anything, and it's steel type attacks on, so I think Marowak here would have been perfect. You've got the Decidueye if we can get ourselves into a decent position. Decidueye is quite threatened by our Hail Mode anyway, and there's the Incineroar as well, and you know, Mudsdale if the Trick Room does go up. They do put a lot of pressure on Marowak, but the same can be said for a lot of other Pokemon that we got in the team and that we did decide to bring. But I feel like for this specific team, this specific matchup, we needed to primarily bring Marowak. I think we also needed Tapu Lele as well. Tapu Lele is like one of the only Pokemon that allows us to, you know, we've got Dazzling Gleam on it, we are Scarfed, so we make sure we get big damage onto certain Pokemon before they can move, like the Porygon Z and the Lucario potentially. And we got the Psychic that can do huge damage to Lucario and just, you know, remove it from the field. Even if it's sashed, we've got the Hail Mode to take advantage of. So I think something like a Vanilluxe, Tapu Lele lead here would have been a lot better. Maybe turn 1 we go Psychic into the Porygon Z. Switch into Marowak with the Vanilluxe and then go from there, because if the Porygon Z doesn't protect, I mean, then we get good damage off onto it. If we see a Follow Me, it pulls it onto Lucario because of the hail, it goes down. But that's a better way to approach the matchup. It doesn't resolve the fact that we have got really very little in a way to stop Trick Room and Follow Me. So it's something that we need to look at. I'm going to come back on Monday, and I'm going to, because the thing is, I don't want to keep this episode going on too long. I just want to analyse the areas that we need to look at. And on Monday's episode, what I'll do a quick brief overview of what on the back of this, and I'll say these are the changes that we've made to help us with this, and this, X, Y, and Z sort of thing. So hopefully that works out. If it's not something you think it's going to work, let me know again. But I think it will. But this is a big, I think we led wrong in this match. I think we just haven't got the tools to help us against this kind of setup. And generally, it's just a pretty difficult kind of lead to kind of approach, just showing how good Lucario can be. And I think it would have been as good without that vacuum wave taking down the Sandslash early on. I think that the Follow Me support in general would have been huge here, and then my opponent would have been able to get that Trick Room up and start really ploughing through the team, as we kind of saw we kind of happened in the end anyway. But that is that game. I think the only other game that I want to really cover today, and like I said, this is a bit rough and ready, guys, but we are going to be covering a lot more stuff when we go forward. The other game that I want to touch on, because we haven't had another loss this week, is in today's episode. So we're going up against Jason here, and as we've mentioned in the comments as well, we probably do have a lot of weaknesses to I'm just going to pull it up right now if I can, and here we go. So yeah, we were up against Jason, yes, in today's episode, and Sun is not a great matchup for us here. I think we approached the match as best we could, but I think the one thing, and I even said in the episode, that scares me the most about the Sun team rather than just the Sun, is that Lilligant, because it's got the ability to put things to sleep to stop us actually getting attacks off and being able to deal any damage, reasonable damage, to the Torkoal. And Vanilluxe isn't the kind of Pokemon you want to be bringing in to disrupt the Sun either. You know, we're going to bring it in on an eruption, and we're probably going to lose it in most case scenarios. So it's a very difficult matchup. I will just go flick through it. So we decide to lead off with our Marowak and Tapu Lele, and the basic reason here for us doing that was to try and at least get something out of this turn, either a substitute up with Marowak. If we got that up, it kind of makes us immune to the sleep powder the next turn, or we get a Psychic off with our Tapu Lele. So that's like the two things that we're trying to do. Fortunately, my opponent plays it, we went for the Psychic into the Torkoal just to kind of reduce the damage on the eruption. Fortunately, my opponent played it really smartly here, protecting the Torkoal turn 1, putting the Marowak to sleep first, and then the next turn taking advantage and putting that Tapu Lele to sleep. The next turn, so we were in a bit of a tight situation. Both Pokemon taking big eruption damage as well. We'll just zip forward a little bit. So there we go. We get fortunate with the Marowak because it wakes up turn 1. After it's put to sleep, it stays asleep that turn. The following turn, Tapu Lele gets put to sleep, Marowak wakes up, and we get a Flare Blitz off into that Lilligant. In the process of doing that, though, we do take a big eruption from this Torkoal, which is a bit unfortunate, but I think we targeted right there. We got rid of the bigger threat, which was that Lilligant in the sun. Now this puts us into another tight position because we see the Nihilego come onto the field for Jason now. If I can stop, should probably timestamp these a little bit better, but we'll do this going forward. So we see the Nihilego come in now, and it does threaten. You know, our Tapu Lele is still asleep. Marowak doesn't want to be taking a Power Gem, and our only hope here is to really wake up with Tapu Lele and be able to get a Psychic off. Hope that Nihilego isn't sashed either, so we can pick up a KO and get rid of it, and maybe make some sort of comeback later on in the game. As we see, we do wake up with Tapu Lele, getting the Psychic off into that Nihilego. Unfortunately, it is sashed. We do lose the Marowak. No, we don't lose the Marowak that turn, but we do, because we protect that turn, obviously, because of the threat from the Power Gem. We didn't know if we were going to wake up. We go down to the Eruption. Now we get Vanilluxe in here, and we know because the Nihilego's on the sash, if it stays in, it's going to go down to the residual hail damage. So one thing we can do here, what do we do? I'm just trying to jog my memory what we do. So we let the Marowak go down. We stay in with Vanilluxe because we've got the Gyarados in the back and we don't want to switch that in on an Eruption. So we just go for a Blizzard, get as much damage as we can off. Do decent damage, but then in the process lose Vanilluxe to a single target Eruption. Basically why I'm showing you this game, guys, is because after this we get the Gyarados in, we stall out the Psychic Terrain, which is nice, get the Z move off into the Lele, and then one-on-one with the Torkoal, which is fine. But the reason I'm showing you this match is, it's a little bit strange, but I don't think it's a very good matchup for us at all. We got the result, and I think we got very lucky in getting that result. And there's a big difference between winning a game and coming away from it and thinking that matchup is completely fine for us to play. Like, that matchup is like, we can do that over and over and over again. My opponent can switch up what they're doing, but we've got the resources, we've got the Pokemon, we've got the switches, we've got the synergy, we've got the offense, we've got the defense to deal with that matchup. And 100% we do not have that going up against Sun. We had to rely on very lucky RNG. You can argue as well that Sleep Powder can miss, but majority of the time it's going to hit. It's in your opponent's odds that it will hit. So you've got to rely on it hitting. You've got to think it will hit, and you can't play a matchup based on certain low accuracy moves missing, because majority of the time they will hit, and that's when you get punished for it. So I think this matchup is another one that we need to look at. Sun is really difficult for us to deal with, especially with the Lilligant, Torkoal, and that Trick Room as well. There's a Trick Room mod in here as well. Brought to this match, there was obviously a Trick Room mod on the team. It wasn't brought into this game though. I think it would have been even more difficult for us to function on. So we've got to look at a few aspects here going into next week's episodes. We need to look at ways around beating Trick Room a bit more solidly, especially Trick Room with Follow Me support, because we've not really got any answers to that, and we need to look at our Sun matchup. Now, I don't mind our Rain matchup at all. I think our Rain matchup isn't too bad, because switching Vanilluxe in on Rain is nowhere near as bad as switching it in on Sun. I think as well, because Gigalith, majority of our team is a lot faster than Gigalith. We can play around that, and we've got tools to stop Trick Room flat out. And you know, normal Gigalith teams don't know, like Trick Room Gigalith teams don't really have that kind of coined Follow Me Trick Room setup. You've got that very famous Trick Room team that Lou ran with the Smeagol and the Porygon Z. That did have the follow me with the Choice Band Gigalith in the back. So I think a team like that would be extremely difficult to play against. So we've got a few things we need to think about going into Monday's episode. And what I'm going to do, rather than kind of come up with these answers right here and now, I'm going to open the floor for you guys to respond. Let me know what your thoughts are, because I've got ideas with where I want to take this on Monday, but I'm not 100% on them yet. I've got some ideas of how we resolve these issues, and like I said, we'll open up Monday's episode by talking about the areas that we looked at on this episode here today, the Analyzer episode, and what we've done to change those going into next week, and why we've done that because of what we've looked at today. But I want you guys to let me know your opinions and your thoughts as well on what you would maybe change up in the team to kind of overcome these obstacles and stuff like that. And hopefully by doing that as well, guys, it's going to help you kind of adapt it into your own kind of playing style and adapting your own teams and things like that. So, and we'll do it together. And then next week, what we'll do when we finish up with the Hail team, we'll have a more complex episode analyzer. It'll be a bit more fluid as well, and we'll come back to the points we've made today. And the points we've looked at through the week next week, and we'll make kind of a conclusion on everything with the team and what would be best for us to move forward with it. And I hope that makes sense for you guys. So I am going to wrap things up here, guys. I do realise this is probably being a bit long in places, but it's because it's the first one that we're doing. Like I say, I want to make sure that you've got the right kind of message for why we're doing this. The other thing is, it's a bit rough and ready with the video clips, and I've literally just come into this after recording today's School of Hard Knocks episode, and I need to look at ways of how we can clip the video a lot better so we have a bit more of a fluid flow to it all. So we'll get better as time goes on, so just be a little bit patient. But I would love to hear your ideas and your feedback on this little side series, because it will get polished as we go on. It will get a lot more fluid. It will become a lot more useful. As I say, we are in the kind of baby step stages of it at the minute, but I do feel like it's going to get to the point where it is very beneficial, and the more we do it, the better that, and the easier it will get at that. If there's anything that you feel like I missed out that you think I should have covered, let me know, but give me your ideas for what changes you would make to kind of cover these weaknesses that we've had this week, and then we'll approach things again on Monday and start all over again, start the process all over again, have another really fun week with the Hail team, some new additions in there possibly. And if you're getting your ideas on over the weekend, I will consider them to play on Monday, and obviously all credit due to all of you guys and anyone that does suggest something that we try and it does work. And again, I guess doing that as well kind of helps promote team building as a group as well. You know, you all chip in ideas, and sometimes, and like you look at the most successful VGC players, they've all got their groups and cliques and teammates and friends that they work with. It's always a good idea to bounce your ideas off friends and people that you know and trust, because they'll give you ideas that you might not have thought of, and areas and things like that that you kind of probably or may have just overlooked. That could be the actual answer to the team. So it's not a bad thing asking for help or looking for help either. It's all about trying to better yourself, and sometimes you need help to better yourself, and that's the message we're going to go away with today. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I hope it hasn't been too kind of staggered and a bit tedious. I hope it has been enjoyable. I actually really enjoy this. I do talk a lot. I feel like I have a lot to say on a lot of things. But hopefully it was all relevant. Hopefully it all made sense. If you've enjoyed the episode, as always, leave a like on the video. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe. As I always say, we have a lot of VGC content on the channel. We have our best of threes. We have daily content, School of Hard Knocks. We have a basketball double series, QR code, streams on a Thursday, and all sorts of stuff going on. And so do subscribe and stay tuned to all of that action, because it will be ramping up as we get towards Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon coming out very soon. But yeah, have an amazing weekend, guys, whatever you're ending up doing. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves, and I will catch up with you all bright and breezy. I said this in the episode, it's not going to be bright, I'm not even going to go into it, but I will catch you on a lovely Monday evening with an episode of the School of Hard Knocks, and we'll just recap what we said today and go over the changes for into next week. So thanks again, guys, take care of yourselves, and I will see you all next week. So until then, Bye bye.